Something that you'll hear mentioned often in any conversation about Tesla vehicles is their crash safety rating. Teslas are the safest cars in the world, which sounds like a great thing, and it's objectively an advantage to drive a car that is quote-unquote safe. No reasonable person would argue with that. But at the same time, I also remember hearing for most of my life that Volvo was the safest car in the world, and not once have I even considered buying a Volvo. So how do we make this topic interesting and enticing? Can safety be cool? Obviously, we can show a bunch of crash test footage. That's awesome, and it pretty effectively drives home the key point here. You can smash into stuff with a Tesla and not die, which is fantastic. But there are multiple factors that go into achieving that end result. Tesla really takes a holistic approach to making their vehicles as safe as possible. From the design of the frame to the onboard equipment to the software, there is so much going on here, and Tesla's safety measures are in a constant state of improvement. So not only is this just cool to learn about, one of the features we discuss here could even save your life one day. Let's start with the fundamentals here, the structural components of a Tesla that have been engineered to perform a specific task in the event of a collision. They have two main goals. Number one is to protect the occupant. That's a given. And number two is to protect the battery pack, because if you survive the impact but then immediately burst into flames, then that's still not any good. A slight disadvantage to the electric vehicle platform, although I have seen data that shows combustion engine vehicles are about 100 times more likely to combust than EVs anyways. One undeniable advantage that comes with any electric vehicle is that they don't have an engine block sitting in between the bumper and the cabin. This means that the entire front end of a Tesla has the ability to crumple. And by collapsing in a very specific way, the structure of the vehicle will absorb as much energy from the collision as possible. The first line of defense is the bumper beam, which is a piece of metal that sits just behind the plastic bumper and runs parallel. If you have a little fender bender style crash, this will take the impact and it's pretty easy to replace. Moving on from there, you have two crush cans or crash rails on either side of the car, and those are metal beams that run from the front to the back. These will collapse and absorb the impact of a low-speed collision up to around 20 miles per hour. Beyond that, things start to get serious as the energy from the collision reaches the main structure of the vehicle. Tesla has specifically engineered their new front gigacasting to absorb and then resist energy from a head-on collision. For the first 2 feet of the casting, there are 3 structural ribs that run from the front to the back and are designed to crumple easily. But as you move towards the back of the casting, you get progressively thicker levels of ribbing that are tied together with a honeycomb of triangular patterns. This section is much stronger, and this is where the vehicle's strategy for managing the collision turns from absorbing energy to resisting. Tesla calls this controlled crushing. Now, this isn't the only line of defense built into the front end. Tesla has set up multiple load paths through different crush structures that are optimized for different impacts. The lower load path that sits underneath the casting will divert some crash energy into the subframe, and as the subframe crumples, it's actually designed to pull the front drive unit straight down and away from the rest of the vehicle, so you never have to worry about the front motor coming up into the cabin or getting pushed into the battery pack. The subframe crash rails are also set wider apart than the main structure, so if you hit something like a tree or a post with just the corner of the vehicle, that will be outside of the main crush can, but it will still get absorbed by the lower subframe load path. And that lower rail is set at an angle so that as it is absorbing the crash, it's also pushing the vehicle away from the point of impact, so the cabin will be clear of the object by the time it passes by. In the event of a really bad collision, where the impact makes it all the way through the front casting, this is the point where you want the car to stop crumpling and start holding its ground. Tesla designs their door frames, glass, and battery pack to provide a rigid structure that holds onto the energy coming from the crumple zone. The sides of a Tesla body are composed from multiple layers of stamped steel plates. So we're talking about the roofline, the strip below the doors, and the B-pillar that comes up in between the front and back door. On the inside, these have a skeleton structure of ultra high-strength steel. The middle layer is mostly also ultra high-strength steel, with some aluminum and more high-strength steel. Then the outer shell is made entirely from mild steel. This sandwich of steel makes the side structure of a Tesla vehicle incredibly strong and resistant to collapse. When Tesla performed their head-on crash test of the Model Y, this structure held up so well that they were still able to very easily open the front door even after smashing into a brick wall. Tesla's roof may be constructed mostly from glass, but it's a very specific structural glass. In conjunction with the ultra-high-strength steel frame, the roof of a Model 3 can resist over 20,000 pounds of force, more than 5 times the weight of the vehicle, and equivalent to having 2 full-grown elephants sit on the car at once. The battery pack in the Tesla vehicle is also designed for maximum safety, just like everything else. Probably the biggest advantage that the battery pack offers is just its sheer weight. By placing 1,000 pounds of battery cells underneath the floor, an electric vehicle can have an incredibly low center of gravity. This makes them nearly impossible to roll over. All Tesla battery packs are built to be extremely rigid, but their latest design, the structural pack from the new Model Y, is the strongest yet. That uses wide-diameter steel battery cans sandwiched between layers of steel and aluminum with a high-density foam sprayed inside to fill every void. If you look at the Sandy Munro teardown, the thing is just a solid brick. One significant advantage that Tesla has over everyone else is their fleet data. Every single Tesla on the road has a full set of surround cameras and a high-powered computer to process the video. So Tesla can actually use their in-car data to look at real-world conditions around all kinds of different collisions, because every crash is different. The Tesla engineers want to make sure that they've taken all possibilities into consideration. Most people wouldn't realize this, but the interior of a Tesla vehicle is absolutely loaded with different sensors, and most of them are dedicated to improving crash safety. The car is always aware of where the seats are positioned, where the steering wheel is, what's happening with the seatbelt. The car is even measuring the weight of each person in the car and where they are sitting on their seat. The car makes all of these calculations within 10 milliseconds of an impact detection, and the computer is going to use all of that data in real time to decide how to best deploy the airbags for maximum effect. The airbag system even has active vents that can change the internal pressure of the bag to enhance protection based on the angle of the crash. And these software-based measures are in a constant state of improvement. Tesla uses their in-house crash lab to constantly run new computer simulations and practical tests to help them tune the airbags and seatbelts for optimum safety. The automated system has gotten so good in recent versions that the car will now start making preparations before a crash even happens. Tesla's AI vision network is always on, regardless of whether you're using autopilot or not. So those cameras can see when you're about to hit something or get hit, and the computer will actually pre-tension the seatbelts to make sure that everyone is held down before the moment of impact even arrives. As Elon Musk said at Tesla's most recent shareholders meeting, the best crash is no crash. And what he means by that is that the first real line of defense against a collision isn't the bumper beam or the crush cans, it's actually the vehicle's autonomous driving features. Every high-end car now has automated emergency braking and maybe some degree of automated steering, and those can operate as a collision avoidance system, but only to a very limited degree. And by the time those kick in, the vehicle is already in the danger zone. Tesla is working on an AI-driven system that can actively prevent the vehicle from even entering the danger zone to begin with. Tesla's autopilot uses something called an occupancy network. It's an AI neural network, and its job is to use the image data from the surround cameras to understand the environment around the vehicle, including the road conditions and all of the other cars that are sharing that road. This AI is not only recognizing where everything is in three-dimensional space and identifying what everything is, but it's also making predictions about where all of these things are going to be in the future. Using that 3D map, the car can plot out all of the danger zones on the road. It knows that if it enters any of those areas, there will be a high likelihood of a collision. So now it can plot a course through the road environment that actively avoids even the possibility of a future collision. And the car can do this much better than a person. Yes, even you, and that's simply because the car can see in every direction at once, And you can't. The technology just isn't there yet. Obviously, there are still plenty of situations where the human has to intervene to prevent autopilot from crashing itself, but we could get to a point in the not-so-distant future where it's more likely that autopilot will intervene against the human to prevent them from crashing the car. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up today if you liked it. That is so important for getting our content out to more people. If you enjoy the content, then you'd probably also enjoy our weekly newsletter, so sign up with the link down below at theteslaspace.com. A huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters who are listed on the screen now. You help us make the best content we can, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.